guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Bex Maria here. I am the owner of SZNBEAUTY. In this video, I'm going to show you your acrylic to monomer ratio. Hopefully this video can help you learn how to apply acrylic better. Before we get into acrylic application, I wanted to give you guys more of a background on acrylic liquid. Here I've demonstrated it as a house, so it's like a studio, you know, whatever you want to call your room. If it's in a cold room, that means it will take longer to dry, and that's just because the room is cold and it takes longer for the acrylic to actually set and be, you know, rock solid. However, if it's in a hot room or even a hot climate, your acrylic will take shorter time to dry. If you are a beginner nail tech, I would highly advise for you to know your room temperatures. If you're in a really cold climate, then I would say make sure the liquid monomer is warm, just so it can dry at a faster rate, just slightly. If you're in a really hot climate, make sure your bead is on the wet side and it will give you enough time to move your acrylic around before it sets. These are things you'll need to start this acrylic training process: acrylic powder, acrylic liquid, hand tissue, and 100% Kolinsky brush. Make sure it's 100% Kolinsky brush. It will last you longer and it will be durable for applying acrylic nails. First thing you need to do is dip in your brush into the liquid to remove all the air bubbles and pat it to dry. Don't swipe, don't do anything extra. This will preserve your brush. And then I'm going to show you a few techniques of knowing which bead is good to go. As you can see on the screen, this is more of a dry bead, so I'm going to disregard that on the right side. To pick up a bead that will polymerize, I usually dip my brush in once, swipe it along the dapping dish, and then go into the acrylic powder. I'll wait for it to have that glossy look, then I'll know it's ready. Here is a bead that is polymerizing as it's on the brush, and this is good to go. It will be perfect to give you durability, and also you can be able to move it around on your nails. I'm going to go in again to try and pick up a much larger bead. So this for me is a large bead. I am using a size 8 brush, and for me, I class this as a large bead. I know everyone's different. Someone might say that it's too small, but for me it's large. And this bead here is a small bead. Knowing your brush technique is quite important. So when your brush is at a 20 to 30 degree angle, you're most likely to pick up a large bead. If it's at 40 to 60, you're likely to pick up a medium bead. And if it's at 60 to 80, it's going to be a small bead. Using these techniques, I want you to try it out yourself. I am going to pick up a small bead, and I usually tilt my brush to the side to pick up the smallest of beads, and this would be a perfect one. Remember, to pick up the perfect bead, I found the best way is to dip in your brush once, swipe it along the dapping dish, and then go into the acrylic powder. With the medium bead, tilt your brush at a 40 to 60 degree angle. And then I'm going to go in to try and pick up a large bead. As you can see, I've had to move the acrylic part to make sure my brush is at a 20 to 30 degree angle. Keep trying this and you will eventually end up finding the perfect bead for you that will work. So small, medium, and large. Again, I'm using a size 8 brush. I will show you what I've been doing to practice this technique on the acrylic mat. There is a link in the description as well. To pick up a large bead, I have angled my brush again at 60 to 80 degrees. I've just been practicing on this mat day in and day out, and on this day my room temperature was around 21 degrees, but it's really good to have a room temperature of at least 20 to 22 degrees for your bead to dry, you know, at room temperature rate, at neutral room temperature rate, as you can see here. This mat helped me a lot with shaping and knowing when to tap the acrylic, when to swipe the acrylic, and when to shape it. So here I placed a large bead just before the free edge of the nail, and then I tapped it down, and once I felt the acrylic was getting hard to move, I dipped my brush into the liquid, wiped it off, and came back and started swiping, gently swiping and shaping the nail before it was fully dry. My room temperature was neutral, so it was around 21 degrees, and that's why the acrylic dried at this rate. Like I said before, your room temperature matters. With the cuticle bead, I went in with a small bead. This was my small bead. I placed it just before the cuticle and allowed it to melt into it. So for me, because the bead was more on the dry side, I was just swiping more than tapping. And with the acrylic bead, you don't want to do too much because you might risk flooding the cuticle. To create the apex, I came in with an even smaller bead just above the cuticle and the free edge, and I swiped it down. I'm going to quickly show you how else I worked with this mat. So with a smaller size nail, I used a medium bead, placed it before the free edge, and then I swiped it down. Like I said, the room temperature was very neutral, so the acrylic bead didn't dry too fast and it wasn't too wet either. It was easy to mold and shape. Make sure you're shaping as you work to maintain that nice crisp look. I took another medium-sized bead and placed it just before the cuticle. As you can see, this bead was more on the wet side, so I had to make sure I'm cleaning the cuticle area. I had some space at the free edge, so I applied a small bead and then again shaped it. Remember, shape as you work, and that will give you that crisp look as well. Don't forget your apex. Make sure your nails are having that nice sharp look and also a thicker apex to avoid breakage. I will show you more again on a practice hand as we go along this video. Here I picked up a large bead, placed it down and started shaping. All I can say is practice every day, practice consistently, be dedicated to getting better at doing nails. Use this mat, use a practice hand. The best way to learn with acrylic is actually doing. I'm a visual learner, so I thought it would be better to watch videos and then when I actually do acrylics on someone, I will learn that way. But that didn't help me too much. I felt like actually sitting down with myself and this lovely mat, I was able to learn more about acrylic, knowing when to swipe, knowing when to tap, knowing how much more to add, and also when it is actually dry. These are very important for you to know as a beginner nail tech because you want to work efficiently. You don't want to learn on the job, learn before the job. From this mat, you can see the middle is dry, the far right is not, and the thumb is still wet. I'm going to show you how I've practiced on a practice hand that's more realistic to improve on my cuticle bead as well as, judging what type of bead I'll need. Here I'm going to need most likely medium beads because of the size of the nail, and that's what I picked up. Placed it just before the free edge and started patting it down. Make sure your finger is facing down because of gravity. It will also help you move that acrylic to where you want it to be. As you can see, I felt like the bead was a bit on the bouncy side, so I started molding the nail, shaping it on the sides as well. Always watch what your acrylic is doing. Is it drying? Is it still wet? That will allow you to judge whether you need to swipe or pat. And then I'm going in again with another medium bead, and that is at a 40 to 60 degree angle. Just a reminder, and placing it just before that bead. Here we're starting to build the apex, the strength of the nails. As you can see, all I'm doing is tapping it down because the bead is on the wet side. Don't swipe, that's how you end up with acrylic on your brush while getting stuck on your brush. And again, remember to clean it as you go along. Keep practicing your brush techniques until you find out what works for you. Something to always remember is clean your brush as you go, shape the nail while it is still on the wet side, on the bouncy side. Check the apex, is it good, is it not? Only you can decide this and how you want to achieve a perfect nail. With a cuticle bead, I do pat the brush with the acrylic on it on the tissue. That way it can release some of that liquid before I place it on the cuticle. This way the cuticle would not be flooded. I have found this has helped me a lot more with cuticle placement, just because I will not have to chase that cuticle bead around too much, and it will dry a lot more faster. I personally feel this was a good application, and you can see the smoothness from the cuticle to the free edge, and also just the shape itself, it has been maintained. And this is how you end up with a nice acrylic nail. With the matte, I do want to say it's very easy to clean. Once the acrylic has fully dried, all you have to do is just like peel them off and then use acetone to wipe over where you have used, and then store your matte away. Was this video helpful to you? What did you learn? What haven't you learned that you would like to know? Comment below. Please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with a friend who you think would benefit from it. Tune in next week for the shaping video where I will show you how to shape your acrylic nails. I will see you next week. Bye bye.